which is nothing new to them or to us.
But it can't happen in January.
But with respect to the larger issue of consolidation and the savings anticipated, the New York State Office of Real Property Services, ORPS, recommends consolidation of towns with county tax services statewide at the county level. So I'm merely following the directive or the recommendation of the New York State Office of Real Property Services in this regard. Last year, for 2010, the county made an allocation, a budgetary allocation in their budget to facilitate and handle the transfer of consolidation between the town and the county. This year, I chose not to do that. This year, I did it in my budget. I made an allocation for the transition period in 2011 in the event that coalesces at the county level. There remains interest at the county, as Roger noted in the letter. There remains interest at the county level to consolidate. There remains interest from me to consolidate. We're under a directive from the New York State Office of Real Property Services to consolidate, and as Roger mentioned, that's the way it's trending. So, with respect to my presentation of the 2011 budget and statement, I'd like to thank everyone tonight and move to close the special portion of the meeting.
No, I'd like to say something,
Sure.
Supervisor. In the first instance, I'd like to thank all of the people who are here tonight. There is a large crowd, which is not usual or typical for a work session. And I think that's important. I see people from the library. I see people from the museum. I see lots of people here who are interested in participating because Supervisor Wrights has decided to cut entirely the budget for the library and for the Southeast Museum. I can tell you that that will not be the case as long as I'm a member of this board. And that's because I consider these are institutions that help our town and that I know I like to look at. But that being said, I wanted to start out by just thanking everyone here. I also thank the deputy sheriff who's in the back. I know that it would be, Ms. Kalbfeld isn't here tonight, so she called the deputies the last time, so at least we've cut that one off at the pass. Now, in addition, just so that it's clear, as far as the homestead, as far as this consolidation of tax services, last year when I and Bob Cullen were campaigning, it was a big issue. And one of the reasons why consolidation goes against our best interests in the town, the majority of the residents in this town, is because we will then have eliminated what's called the homestead exemption, which helps homeowners, owners of homes in our community, in our town, to pay less in taxes. I went at great length, did a lot of exploring into this and a lot of research, and I will tell you that if we consolidate our services, we will lose the homestead exemption. Now, you have to know that condominium and townhouse people don't benefit as much from this homestead exemption. We said that. But the problem really is the majority of people in the town of Southeast benefit from the homestead exemption. You will hear from Supervisor Wrights that, in fact, he believes that we can have appointed some kind of a somebody from our town who will then operate as a liaison from the town so that we can preserve our homestead exemption. I will tell you that that will not happen. We will lose our homestead exemption. And in addition, remember everyone, if the county took over our town or our taxing services, what would happen is you're going to have someone who might be from the town of Kent, might be from the town of Patterson, somebody who doesn't have an interest in this town, somebody who doesn't know the town as much, somebody who may be more politically influenced than anyone else, and we will be lost in the shuffle. And remember, our town, we bring in the most taxes here because we have the most industry. We have the most to lose. So not only did the county not budget, not know about our intent or our alleged intent to have a consolidation of services, so it couldn't happen, I don't believe that the county believes that we are ever going to have this, that this is in our best interest. So be aware of that. Be aware that the supervisor's proposed budget for 2011, besides cutting the tax assessor's office completely, so now we know that can't happen, everybody. The county didn't budget for it. So now we get that back in. The assessor, the collector, all of these other ones. However, there are certain people who haven't been cut. I mean, I know, unfortunately, that there are people out there, employees, who are going to have to face decrease salaries, some people who will have to not be in our employ anymore. But I will tell you that it will be a sensible budget, and I want you all to please come back. I want to hear from the people in the library. It's important that people from the library come here and explain why they believe their services are important, because I believe your services are important. But you're going to hear the supervisor say that he does not believe that your service is important, that it is a service that can be cut. The Southeast Museum, the same. The assessor's office, the same. The tax collector. Yet when I look at certain services, including the supervisor's line, it hasn't decreased. Everyone's got to pull in everyone's got to tighten their belt, including the supervisor's office. So that's important. So you've got to know that we are behind you, and we are going to present a sensible budget. And if the supervisor does not agree with it, I don't want to hear gravy train. I don't know about you guys, but I can't take another day of listening to the gravy train. I don't want to, I'm going to whisper it, garbage contract. No more, no more. This has got to be a sensible, this has to be a sensible budget. It's got to serve you all. You are going to be spending money, but it's got to serve you. Please come out, come to these meetings. Let us know, because we cannot hear anything more about gravy trains. This is your town. This is your life. That's why I came on board in this town, because I want to be sensible. Thank you.
I would like to speak to certain other points. Certainly, I would like to speak to certain of the points. Certainly, it's a mischaracterization of my position to assert that I don't value the library, I don't value the museum. That's not true. The library is an important community asset, and the museum with it. But the larger issue is, that's not the issue at all. The larger issue is, do we use public sector monies and raise taxes for what are essentially private sector charities? That's a concept of government, and the matter is more it's a complicated matter, but the idea is simple. Do we hike property taxes for charities, or do the charities self-fund? With all respect to the library, and again, I've arranged for private sector grants to the library. I support the library. I love the library, and the museum. But with respect to the history of the town of Southeast, we're founded in 1788. The appropriations to the library really ramped up at the end of the 20th century. So for almost 200 years, the town board did not support the library as a charity. Obviously, for many of those years, not just the Brewster Public Library, any library. So the history of our culture, of our community is charities self-funded. The end of the 20th century, the go-go years, the Reagan boom and whatnot, the economy boomed, mortgage tax proceeds boomed, a lot of revenue was flowing in, and there were many voices seeking those revenues. We no longer live in that economy, not right now. And we have to look at our core values, we have to look at our history, we have to look at where we're going. And our core values are public safety. That takes nothing away from the library. Again, I support the library, I love the library. What we need to commit town revenues to are our core mission statements. And our core mission statement is public safety. That's highways, that's the building department, that's the planning department, that's the fire code department, and so forth. And as I noted earlier, in Southeast, we have a strong ancillary commitment to recreation. And I've made significant cuts in recreation, but not with respect to the programs, with respect to downsizing personnel. Speak to a different issue on the issue of the supervisor's line. In my budget, all department heads, including me, 0% increase, no raises. With respect to non-managerial, non-union personnel, I contemplated a 2% increase because these folks work hard, and sometimes the smallest checks matter the most. And under the union contracts, and not beating up on the Teamsters of the CSEA by any means, from years back, the union contracts provide this year for a 4% raise. I and my colleagues are chatting with representatives and leadership of the unions about the possibility of taking a look at that 4% increase and whether or not there might be an opportunity for an agreement regarding that issue. But that's up in the air, so I had to budget that 4% with respect to union employees. So that's the explanation, that 2% for our assistant, works hard, is why the supervisor's budget line was up a little bit. And it wasn't me, and it wasn't any of the department heads.
Can I make one comment on that?
Yes.
I've been in contact with the representatives from the Teamsters and the CSEA, and they are discussing the contract with the idea of a freeze and then an extension of the contract so they would make up the difference the following year. So that's it being discussed as we sit here this evening. I cannot support a 2% raise for some folks and firing other people. If we are eliminating positions, no raises. We are, on the town board, we're going to drop our salaries back to the 2009 level, which I think is correct. There's not a lot of funding here anyway, but we're going to drop that back. And I don't support any raises for anyone if we're eliminating people's livelihood. It just doesn't make sense.
And it also doesn't make sense, unfortunately, for overtime and comp time and things like that. We're going to have to really cut that out. And unfortunately, it's because we're facing such a shortfall that when you're speaking about people getting overtime and comp time or hiring temporary people to take over the different tasks, we can't have that. And we have to share services, share people. So that's an important part of this, because right now when we see that the supervisors' lines have actually increased and the line for the budget officer, which Supervisor Wrights is, has remained the same, I don't see any cuts with that. You know, we as a supervisor, plainly, as a leader, if you're asking your troops to take cuts, not to do certain things, you have to do that yourself. That's what I'm looking at. We're taking cuts because I think it would be awfully dishonest of us to ask you people out there who work for the town of Southeast to take cuts and taxpayers to pay more money when we're not taking the cuts. But I noticed that line hasn't changed. The assessors department is now eliminated, but nothing else has changed in the supervisors department. That's what I'm speaking about. That's what I find is a problem.
Further comment?
Liz, we'll modify that as we get to the budget, okay?
I have some comments. Supervisor, you had mentioned that if we continue to budget at last year's level, we're looking at a 46% tax increase that I don't think anyone here can stomach. And this is an example of what's ahead if we don't work together. The county needs to work with the towns. The town needs to work with the village. Whether it's consolidation of services, why we have two tax assessors, one at the county level, one at the town level. These things need to be merged. Private industry have merged numerous things. We are behind the ball now. We're looking at a 46% tax increase. We can no longer have business as usual. When you had mentioned in your report that RFPs need to go out for engineering services where we spend millions of dollars, and yet we have people here who say, well, we have engineering firms here for 30 years. That's fine and dandy. It still needs to go out to get the fair market price these days. That if we can reduce some of these costs across the board by inviting all the engineering firms that we now have and new engineering firms, and if we get a 20% decrease in these services, that's a tax savings to everyone here. However, that is a fundamental thing that you and I have fought against, and now the New York State Comptroller's Office has come in here and said that to us, that 8 of the 11 services have not been put out for bid for years. Not only that, legal services have not been put out for bid. And not to rehash things over and over again, I had asked this town board to review that. Not yesterday, but months ago, where hundreds of thousands of dollars were going out the door, and nothing was done about it. And what disgusts me the most is that knowing full well that this New York State Comptroller's Office report came through, chastising this town board as to how we spend money and how we pay out legal services, I refused to sign the most recent voucher from the town attorney in the sum of $18,000, yet other members of this